Dungeons are one of the most important mechanics of Realm of the Mad God. There are over 50 dungeons currently in the game, with more to come in the near future. That being said, with such an old game, older dungeons are bound to fall in terms of quality. Deca has reworked many of these dungeons, but there's still much to be said about dungeons yet to be reworked. In this video, I'm going to focus on some of the rarest dungeons in the realm, address some fields in which they are lacking, and present potential solutions that would improve the dungeon while embracing the essence of the original. Rainbow Road was one of the first event dungeons released by Deca. It contains nothing but a pot of gold, and serves as a reward for players who chase down and kill the leprechaun. Reward chests were quite common back in 2017 when Rainbow Road was first released, but since then, nearly all reward chests have been phased out of dungeons. This is an event dungeon though, and the challenge of the event is to catch the leprechaun, so perhaps it is acceptable in this scenario. Although the dungeon is perfectly fine as a chest, since it's an event dungeon, it may be fun to add a sort of minigame. Upon entering the newly reconstructed Rainbow Road, players will be greeted by the leprechaun, informing them that a pot of gold awaits them at the end of the rainbow, and to get there as quickly as possible. The rainbow would be a short racetrack, filled with obstacles to slow you down. Upon reaching the end, the leprechaun would announce the fastest time, and teleport everyone to a pot of gold, which would work the same as it does now, just having a much shorter invulnerability period. Adding a competitive minigame aspect to the dungeon gives it a little more value. Players could aim to get the fastest time, or challenge their friends to a race. The length of the dungeon wouldn't be significantly increased either. The 15-second invulnerability that currently exists would be replaced with a 30-second race. The Oryx Nexus already has something similar to this. There is a racetrack above the Nexus where players may compete against each other. Santa's Workshop is a one-of-a-kind experience. Instead of fighting enemies, the player is given 120 seconds to clear 3 rooms filled with presents. Each present is capable of dropping loot, and the quality of the loot increases with each room. The final room is capable of dropping respin wine cellar tops and even unbound rings, but these drops are so inconsistent that they hardly incentivize running the dungeon for anything other than a dungeon completion. There are a few things that could potentially improve the consistency and quality of the loot within Santa's Workshop. A new set of untiered weapons were added for Oryxmas 2020. Allowing these to drop from the final room could grant players the possibility of obtaining the coveted Cheerful Chipper. The dungeon completion is provided by a special present located at the entrance of the final room. It currently gives no loot, which could be changed to guarantee a Tier 12 weapon and Tier 6 ability slots. An additional present could also be added to the second room, to drop a guaranteed Tier 13 armor reskin. These items have clearly become less valuable, as indicated by the accessibility of them in Oryxmas 2021, so guaranteeing one set of wine cellar tops wouldn't be so unreasonable for such an exclusive dungeon. Ice Tomb is exactly as the name suggests. It is the bosses of the Tomb of the Ancients on ice. The tomb bosses are not known for being well designed, and the addition of ice combined with much more limited space provides an experience that many consider unfair. Recently, Deca has done wonders with dungeon reconstruction, and many have speculated that the Tomb of the Ancients will soon become one of these reconstructed dungeons. If the Tomb of the Ancients is reconstructed, what will happen to Ice Tomb? Will it also be reconstructed? Will Deca take it in a completely different direction? Perhaps they will simply leave it as is, like many other event dungeons. The future of Ice Tomb is rather ambiguous. If it were to be reimagined, the structure of the dungeon would be changed. The current Ice Tomb feels like a cave. This could be remedied with tiled walls. The floor would be made entirely of ice, rather than the current ring of ground which warps the player's movement. As for the bosses themselves, they could take inspiration from the 3 ghosts of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. These suggestions are quite vague. If you have your own suggestions, I implore you to share them in the comments. Belladonna's Garden has an extensive history as far as event dungeons go. It was originally added for Valentine's Day 2014 as part of a Player Appreciation Week. Deca later brought it back as a regular Valentine's Day event, and eventually reworked it into roughly what it is today. This rework happened before the typical reconstructions, and is far from perfect. During a phase in the middle of the fight, colored flowers bloom all throughout the battlefield. These flowers fire a large amount of projectiles which cover the majority of the arena, while doing a varied amount of damage. There's a safe area in the middle, but whether you're supposed to move there, or simply tank the weaker shots is unclear. Towards the end of the fight, Bella does a desperation move, where 4 beds will move to the corners of the arena and fire tentacles, requiring the player to rotate around the room or risk taking substantial damage. Eventually, these buds become vulnerable, and killing them is required to progress the fight. Once one bud is killed, however, it leaves a large safe area that trivializes an otherwise dangerous phase. Difficulty inconsistencies such as this are apparent in other areas of the fight. The first bud phase has a completely safe spot which remains for an extended period of time. Although this dungeon doesn't need a complete overhaul, many of the phases could be tweaked. The aforementioned first bud phase would receive an additional aimed attack to stop excessive safe spot abuse, and the number of bud kills required to pass the phase would be reduced. The flower phase would have red flowers around the outside, white flowers close to the middle, and yellow flowers in between, with fewer projectiles from the yellow flowers. During the desperation move, buds would simply become invulnerable upon taking lethal damage, allowing the phase to play out as normal without creating safe spots for players to hide. The Beachzone is the most deceptive of all event dungeons. The masked party god promises a fun time in the sunshine, but all that waits inside is just a DPS check. The drops are meaningless, being nothing but a few fun consumables and, rarely, a necromancer skin. What could make this forgettable iron getaway into the beach party that it was always meant to be? One of the masked party god's lines states, "Everybody boogie!" And yet, the heroes never actually get a chance to boogie. A Beachzone rework could offer a stage for players to show off their moves. The masked party god will introduce himself and encourage you to dance with him. Players can begin the dance by attacking an object on the stage, and the party god will announce one of the few songs before stating his iconic line. 4 speakers will begin to fire on the players. These do no damage, but inflict a status effect which increases with each subsequent hit. The goal of the dance is to eat as many of the projectiles as possible. Once the song has concluded, the party god will announce who performed the best, and award everyone based on this performance. A poor performance will grant the rewards currently available. A good performance will grant beach balls and sand pails. An excellent performance will grant the summer mystery skins and the summer solstice wizard set. After the initial dance is completed, players may choose to dance again, but no further rewards will be given. Having a unique minigame will bring some much needed life to the Beachzone, in addition to bringing back forgotten collectibles and encouraging the long-anticipated release of dynamic music. The Cave of 1,000 Treasures is the rarest of all Godlands dungeons. It is a rare drop from the Djinn, but the key is uniquely not available in the Nexus. It can instead be obtained from a daily quest called Run the Table. Surely, such a special dungeon would be a memorable and rewarding experience. Unfortunately, though the concept of the traps is also rather creative, the gameplay is bland and outdated. The drops also leave much to be desired, the only unique item being a set-tiered armor. If this dungeon were to be reworked, the exclusivity of the key would need to be highlighted. It would become a solo dungeon, the Godlands drop would be removed, and the effigy quest would be replaced with another opportunity to get a treasure map. This makes the experience far more exclusive, meaning that it can become more rewarding. Upon using a treasure map, you will find that the dungeon is much longer. Each trap would become more threatening. Spike traps would inflict bleed and sick. Boulder traps would deal heavy damage and inflict paralyze, and fire traps would ignore defense. The boss would utilize mechanics from each of these traps to tie it into the rest of the dungeon. For loot, players can expect the typical stat potions, in addition to various quality of life items, including loot potions, backpacks, potions of max level, and the occasional chest or character slot coupon. An exclusive set of abilities would also be available, each one mimicking the effects of a trap. Creating a permanent opportunity to earn vaults and character slots that is directly tied to gameplay could have a very positive effect on the new player experience. Although there are many other rare dungeons that could use an update, these are all the suggestions I've prepared for today. Which rare dungeons would you like to see reworked? Did you enjoy my suggestions? Would you rework the dungeons differently? Please let me know in the comments. And until next time, this is Cat Jones, reminding you to play hard and stay safe.